Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weave from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is the Kenny and Renny post-game show. After it felt like Groundhog Day for me. This Winnipeg Jets team goes in, has a great first period. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Has a great first period against a juggernaut in the Colorado Avalanche, and then watches as the Avalanche inexorably take over that game and just dominate. And I'm going to start where I saw if you notice, my background's a little bit different here. I'm at my mom's place out in Lactabani. So I saw my buddy Dwight, who I always talk about in this show, who's the coach of the Eastman AAA hockey team, the midget hockey team, who is going to this big international tournament in Calgary. He just told me. So, I mean, one thing we like to do on this show is celebrate, local hockey and things like that. And hey, wait a second, Braden, I'm not changing this because I got chirped. I've got like a very specific routine. I go from hat to hat to hat. So don't think that you're changing my mind here, Braden. I don't want you thinking that you have any control over Renny in this situation. Anyways, back to my buddy Dwighty, who's a phenomenal coach, and we played some hockey tonight, and he literally embarrassed some people on the ice. He's a good hockey player. He stole souls tonight from people out on the ice. It was he needs to take it easy on people, is what I have to say. But he had said about that Landeskog line, that there's just nothing you can do but hope to contain them. You can't go out and try and go punch to punch with those guys. You can just hope to contain them. And clearly, this is another night where the Jets couldn't do that. I will say this about this Jets team: what I believe that I've learned from the Jets in the two games they've played the Colorado Avalanche, where I think the Jets came out and put their best foot forward at the beginning of both of those games. This is a Jets team that we started the season believing that they could compete for a Stanley Cup. Clearly, that hasn't worked out that way, the way things have gone throughout the season. I think there's still this feeling that we're waiting for the real Winnipeg Jets to stand up. But I'll say this: I'm convinced from these last couple of games we've seen them play against the Colorado Avalanche that the Jets are just not able to hang with a team the caliber of the Colorado Avalanche. The Avalanche, like I said, inexorably took over those games, dominated those games. And I just think that this was the Winnipeg Jets against a higher tier team. And it was simple as that. The Jets cannot hang with that team. That is what I take away from that game here tonight. Ken may have a different opinion. I love to hear his opinions. And I know that he's going to be fired up because there was some, I said it last game. I threw a little bit of a hand grenade into the conversation about Pierre-Luc Dubois. And Pierre-Luc Dubois clearly is listening to the Kenny and Renny show because he felt called out by Renny and he responded in kind. So I'm sure Ken Weeb is going to be feeling a little bit of, he's going to be poking it back. But hey, let's not wait to see my opinion on what he's going to do. Let's see what he's going to do. It's time to bring in Kenny, the man with the best music of the business. Here's Kenny. Kenny, I'm going to tell you something. I don't care if it makes you uncomfortable. I miss you. You've gone on holidays. You're having a great time down in the sun. I can see it on your face. You've had a little bit of color. You look great, but I miss you. And don't be surprised if at the end of the hug carpet at the Winnipeg airport when you get home, if Renny is not standing there with a boombox over his head waiting for you to get home. I feel like it's been too long. I know it's a road trip. They're going to come back. But I miss you, buddy. It's good to see you. What did you see from the Winnipeg Jets on your end there tonight?
I don't want to start with this comment, but I'm going to highlight it. You're just buttering me up, buttering me up for my return
T
home.
will. T will.
T will.
I'm going to get into that.
I'm not here to. I'm not here to gloat. And Sean always is willing to wear it afterwards. It's all good. I think you touched on it. Again, we know this is pro sports, but Sean, in a lot of ways, this was like the game when your rec team gets bumped up from the second division to the first division, and you play a team of guys who just came back from the Western Hockey League, and next thing you look up, it's a blowout. I mean, man, oh man, that was complete and utter domination from the final two periods from the Colorado Avalanche. And let's be honest, the score was flattering to the Jets based on what happened over those final two periods. They had a great first, exceptional, and then just fell off a cliff. Basically, that was. They barely had the puck. Those top guys took over. They weren't even playing on the same line this time. The two McKinnon and Landeskog absolutely took over the game, and I mean, it's baffling that we're talking about the exact same things after almost every game, Sean. I mean, the Jets had one line going, and that's it. One line. One line had a great first period. They generated a bit, and there was still some effort as the game went on. But, man, where were Scheifele and Blake Wheeler? Where was that line today? I mean, I don't know. That was a tough one for the Winnipeg Jets. We praised them a lot when they came out of the game and were flying. And that was just a tough effort. I mean, again, it's never one play. But Sean, that tripping penalty by Scheifele, the Jets are in complete control of the game. A minute and 6 or a minute and 8 into the second period, you get caught on the wrong side of the puck. We know Nathan McKinnon is a dominant player, but you can't take a penalty there. They let him right back into the game. I mean, I know some people are on Hellebuck for letting it go 5-hole, but look at the entire sequence. Rantanen looks off the defender, passes it down low, and then there's a clear lane. I mean, could he have poke checked him? Maybe, but I mean, I don't know. People trying to pin this on Hellebuck. I mean, it's just baffling to me. Was there one or two he'd like back? Of course, but this wasn't a goaltender letting his team down. This was the roof caving in for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. I mean, that was just a rough go all around. There was not enough commitment, and they just didn't get the job done. I mean, we'll continue to dig deeper, but man, oh man, that was, in a lot of ways, that's got to be tough to watch, right? If you're a member of the Winnipeg Jets, and I mean, you're trying, but there was no answer whatsoever after the game went sideways.
Yeah, and I have to say, the one thing that I thought this game did was that if anyone was out there thinking, well, we took the Calgary Flames who won 10 straight games and we took them down to the final minute of that game, there's reason for hope here. I feel like this game, if you're trying to build the case that the Winnipeg Jets are a team that contend with the very best teams in the league, and they're right there and they just need to turn things around, to me, this just felt like it was like, take that storyline and throw it in the trash. This was, again, two separate tiers of teams. When you saw that at the end of the game, those lines, those top guns on the Colorado Avalanche were absolutely having their way with the Winnipeg Jets. This, to me, is almost I mean, if you want to see what a team looks like when their record is what the Winnipeg Jets record is, that's what it looked like. And that's the kind of different thing. This is the enigma of the Winnipeg Jets, is that so often the game and their capabilities have not necessarily matched their outcome and their points in the standings. Tonight, it absolutely did. This was a team that dusted off the Winnipeg Jets, that spotted them some goals, that wasn't ready to play when they came out, and the Jets jumped on them. And then, I mean, it's the question I want to ask you, and we've got Scotty Billick here waiting, coming to the chat, so I'm going to bring him in right now. I'm going to give him the first crack at this question. I think I know how you feel on this, but I'm going to give this to Scotty. First off, Scotty, it's great to see you. Feels like it's been a bit. You're looking great, my friend. Give me your take on this. Did the Jets fall apart in that game, or did the Colorado Avalanche take over?
No, the Jets fell apart. I mean, yeah, of course, the Avalanche took over, but it's because the Jets allowed it to happen. I mean, you play that first period nearly perfectly, right? Yeah, there were some chances, for Colorado, and as Adam Lowry said after the game, they were going to always get some chances. I mean, that's just kind of what happens. That's a good team. The Jets were leading 3-0, and they lost 6-3. It's embarrassing, is it not? Like, I mean, I don't know really other way to. I don't know any other way to really put it. I mean, it's literally, you allowed 6 unanswered goals. You were playing the second period like your life was on the line, and then in the third period, it looked like this team was just trying not to lose worse than it did. I mean, that's what the game looked like to me. They had as soon as that third goal went in the third period, it seems like it was deflated. And then 56 seconds into the third period, you allow the game-winning goal. I mean, it's just an absolute disaster. I don't think it was all on Colorado. They played a good game, but they didn't play a good game in the first 20 minutes because the Jets figured them out, and then it's just an absolute disaster after.
Kenny, what do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was just so bizarre. Again, I think that those two things that you asked, Sean, are not necessarily mutually exclusive. I think both things happened, and what good
team? Do you think both the Jets fell apart and the Avalanche took over?
Yes. I mean,
shouldn't it only be one or the other?
No, I mean, here's the thing. I think that the Avalanche willed their way to win, but they also just steamrolled their opponent on the way by. That's how I saw it. The Jets just had no answer after that. I mean, they just were unable to answer. Thank you, Earl of the Empire State. Kind of you to say. It was great.
And we don't have time for you to bask in the glory of these comments.
Oh, we
need you to get to work here. I'm sorry.
Says the guy who kept me on for an hour and 45 after the last game. We don't have time to continue. That's an early wake up for you, buddy. That's a wake up. That is a flat out wake up.
Get back to it. We've got a job to do here, Ken. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Kenny's in the garage now.
Yeah, and for the folks who haven't been here, we were so fired up the other night. There, I'm at my in-laws in Arizona here. It's my father. It's my father-in-law's beautiful Thunderbird convertible here. That's what we're keeping in the garage. Yeah, I don't have a car like this in my garage. But anyways, in terms of the Jets, they stopped doing what they do. I mean, Josh Morrissey said it perfectly at the intermission. They stopped skating. I mean, They absolutely stopped skating. And here's the thing. When you stop skating against some of the best players in the NHL, you are going to look extremely slow. Jets didn't win enough puck battles. They didn't win enough races. And they were too tentative. I mean, I know what Mike Johnson said during the intermission. In a lot of ways, he's right. But Nathan Beaulieu has to challenge Nathan MacKinnon on that play. You can't just let him shoot from where he shot it. You backed up too long. Gap control was not there. And hey, don't get me wrong. The best defensemen in the NHL have trouble with Nathan MacKinnon, but that was an example of a guy playing the play a little bit too tentatively, and the puck was rolling. It also rolled up the shaft of his stick and goes in off the boards. And if some people thought that was a bad goal on Hellebuck, that also gets a big fat wake up on this program as well. So
I'll shill.
Oh yeah, very nicely done. Yes, very nicely done.
Use it liberally, Scott. Use it liberally.
It's just weird on my head.
And again, this is not we're here to dump on Nathan Beaulieu. I mean, he blocked a shot, big block on the Adam Lowry goal. But I mean, we were discussing this on text message. I mean, Nathan Beaulieu had a tough start. I mean, there were 2 turnovers on one shift.
Yeah.
I think that the pairing has not been a successful one. I think Nate Schmidt has been caught kind of make up for mistakes of his partner at times, and there too. I mean, Sean, you and I talked about this. I know some people argued that the Jets were making the choice, but no chance. The Jets had Schmidt and Beaulieu out, and Jared Bednar continually got Nathan MacKinnon and the Avalanche top line with Cale Makar out against what is the Jets' third pairing. I mean, he was playing chess out there today, and that's what coaches do when you're trying to take advantage of an opponent. that is 27 points behind you currently after that win. I mean, you talked about the class system, Sean. I mean, the Jets are not in the upper class. Like, just think back to November when the Jets had their best start in franchise history. We were debating if the Jets were actually an elite team. We saw an elite team tonight. The Jets are not an elite team. The Jets are right now barely a bubble team right now.
No, they're not even a bubble team, Kenny. I mean, they've lost 4 straight in a time of the year where you need to be winning hockey games. That's not even a bubble team. That's just a team that's going to get a high draft pick this year. That's all it is.
Well, that's some hard stuff. Let's get into Pierre-Luc
the
Dubois
tank. Roll the tank.
Here, because
no.
is all over me on this. and I want to make sure that people heard me in the last time that we talked about this. I was calling this out, and I still entirely stand beside this. 1 point in 6 games is not good enough for Pierre-Luc Dubois in the last. But what he came out and did tonight, I think people are acting like this is, and I knew this was going to happen. It's funny. I went to my nephew's hockey game, and there was the school that they were playing against. The principal and the vice principal came up to me in the stands while I was on the CJOB pre-game show, and I had the earphones in. I was doing it while I was watching the game, and they came up and said, "We were just listening to Kenny and Renny on the way out here," and they started getting after me for Pierre-Luc Dubois, for my comments on Pierre-Luc Dubois. And I was like, I know you want to rip on me for this, but I'm doing CJOB right now. I was actually on the show. I was doing the analysis on the show, but I knew this was going to happen.
Have you not heard of the mute button? Hit the mute button.
This to me, what we saw from Pierre-Luc Dubois is what we should be seeing. All of the stuff that we're talking about Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I don't know how people can argue that. Like, I don't know how people can argue that a player of Pierre-Luc Dubois' status getting 1 point over 6 games in a stretch of hockey where the Jets need to put up their best is okay. What we saw from Pierre-Luc Dubois tonight was okay. That's exactly what we need to see from him, especially in that first period. So, listen, I'll take my pound of flesh. If people want to think that I just went out, and if people want to take my comments as me saying Pierre-Luc Dubois is not a good hockey player and can't be a good hockey player, then feast away on that. My comments, I feel, were that I have high expectations from Pierre-Luc Dubois, and he wasn't reaching those. I felt he reached them tonight. What did you see, Scott?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I said this on CJOB earlier today. Funnily enough, with Jim Toth, but yeah, I mean, that's it. He had 1 point coming into the game, 6 games. So, but here's the thing about Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I'll even take it one step further. Who was the guy talking tonight? After the game. I mean, it's a 23-year-old that probably shouldn't be out there after a game like this. He's the one taking the brunt of the questions, and so yes, I thought he came out. He had a heck of a game. He set the tone. I mean, the first goal was all him. It was 2 shots. He fought for the second shot, diving to get it. Then then Kyle Connor. It was an unbelievable goal. And then the second goal too. He takes 2 defenders with him before kicking the puck back to Morrissey. So it creates some misdirection, and it allows some net play. And Yevgeny Sveshnikov gets a tip on it. That's what the Jets need. We're not seeing a lot of that from anybody else on this team. But as you said, when Pierre Dubois wasn't going, it was Scheifele and Wheeler that were going. I mean, you can't suggest that those two haven't been playing well either. They have been, but as it was mentioned after the game, I think Jeff was talking about it to the players. Asked Dave Lowry, why doesn't this team have 2 lines ever going at the same time, or 3 or 4, right? I mean, this is what sets them apart from a Colorado, is that they just can't get the consistency on a nightly basis from more than like 1 or 2 players in terms of scoring, and it leads to nights like this where. Yeah, you don't have the gas to run with the big guys like Colorado and other teams.
Ken, well, first off, I just want you to give me your thoughts on Pierre-Luc Dubois tonight, and whether or not you believe that he watches the Kenny and Renny show and felt personally offended by Renny's comments on that. And then I want to get into this because we've touched on this before. The most important thing I think that we can all agree that's going to happen this season is the Jets are going to push to try and sign Pierre-Luc Dubois long term. And I'm going to get to this question. Please answer me on what you saw from Pierre-Luc Dubois tonight, and then throw it back to me, and I'll ask the question of whether or not Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to want to sign here based on the way things are going. But what did you see from Pierre-Luc Dubois tonight, and is Renny solely responsible for him responding the way that he did?
I personally love that you want to take credit for his for his excellent first period. That, Scotty, you should hold the mug up just in silent support right there, please. Excellent work by Dubois. What I saw was very simple. It's what I saw for probably 80% of the games this year. You saw engagement, physical engagement. He had the puck in his stick. Almost the best play, it didn't work out, but he basically threw a guy aside and tried to one-handed pass to Morrissey in the slot for a one-timer. It got intercepted, but that's what we saw from Pierre-Luc Dubois. It was an excellent effort. I like the leadership he showed. I mean, I know this is always a debate, and probably media probably cares more than fans in a lot of areas. I love that he's speaking after tough losses. You know why? Because he wants to be part of the leadership group, and that's what he's growing into. I mean, he's growing into that right before our very eyes as a 23-year-old young player. This guy's a core piece. That's why he was acquired. He's a foundational piece. And I love that he's embracing the leadership role. The Jets had too many passengers tonight. There's no other way around it. But in terms of Dubois, I mean, he's showing fire. My one argument, Sean, and again, I know you didn't like it. For the majority of those 6 games, he was still engaged in those games, even though he's not getting a lot of points. Kyle Connors scored a ton of points during that stretch. So sometimes he doesn't always show up on the score sheet. That's always been the case with Dubois. And I agree he needed to produce more, and he did produce more tonight. But for the most part, he's certainly been their most consistent center, and he's been one of their most consistent players all year. But yeah, you're right. I mean, that stretch of games was too long in terms of point production. But I'll back it up again with what I said. His effort level was high during those games. He might have had 1 or 2 off nights. The puck just wasn't going for him.
So let's get to what people are talking about. And I do think you're right there, Ken.
Sorry, you want me to answer the second question that you've already asked me about Dubois?
I'm going to go to that. I just wanted to respond to that.
Okay.
With Dubois. The one thing that I will say about this, and I think that drives that, is like when it comes to parenting or coaching or all these kind of things, where you are trying to elicit a response from people who are under your charge. I always believe that if you set high expectations for people, then they typically achieve those expectations. And I guess this is just where I'm at. And I think most Jets fans should be at this spot. If you think, and a lot of people clearly do, because there's a really loud chorus of people who want Mark Scheifele traded, and there's and a big impetus behind that is the fact that people think Mark Scheifele can go and Pierre-Luc Dubois can take over as the number 1 center of this team. That's why people are okay with that. My take on that is if Pierre-Luc Dubois is what you expect to be the future of this team, high expectations need to be attached to that player.
Sure.
And to your point, and I think you're right. And I think if we go back on that last, when I tossed that grenade, I think that what we're going to see in that is I don't think I ever said Pierre-Luc Dubois was lacking effort or lacking defensive acumen or not, affecting the game. But I do think that Pierre-Luc Dubois, if you are going to hang your hat on Pierre-Luc Dubois, and it sounds like there's a lot of people out there who are ready to do it, and I think that the Winnipeg Jets franchise as a whole is getting ready to do just that, you have to have a player who not only plays great defense, not only does all the right things on the ice, not only brings those competitive juices that I fully think that he does, and he hasn't stopped all year. You need that player to show up on the score sheet at the most important of times. Now, let's get to the question, and I'm going to go to Scotty first because you lipped me off about it, Ken, so I'm going to go to Scotty on this one first.
Yeah, wake up, Kenny.
Hey,
wake up.
There you go, Kenny. Kenny's getting a taste of his own medicine here. And I love it. I love every second of it. This is the tricky part. And
if and when I lip you off, you'll know.
I've heard that before.
You're subversive in your efforts at times, Ken. Let's go down this road because I find this a fascinating topic. We've explored it on the show before, but I do think the more this happens, the more things kind of fall apart down the road here with the Winnipeg Jets. And I don't think that we can look at the fact that they've lost 3 straight games in the middle of what is supposed to be a playoff push.
It's 4.
This is nothing short of an absolute disaster. If you're Pierre-Luc Dubois and you only have 2 more years of team control, are you thinking now is the time in this offseason to choose my future and lock down with this team? This is my future. I've seen enough from the Winnipeg Jets that I want to make this a permanent thing. Scott, is the failure of the Winnipeg Jets this season affecting the potential to lock Pierre-Luc Dubois down long term?
It's a good question. I don't think so. I think Pierre-Luc Dubois sees an opportunity here to become the player that he wants to become. Could that happen somewhere else? Maybe. But Pierre-Luc Dubois can become a number 1 center on a hockey team. He can become, in my opinion, probably even the next captain of this team. Especially Mark Scheifele's not here past his contract. So that's I think Pierre-Luc Dubois sees all the opportunity in the world here, and a place to make money. So, here's a guy that's probably going to have to. If I was Pierre-Luc Dubois, I'd be asking for more money. If the franchise sees me as hanging their hat, as you say, Sean, on me, I better be getting paid as that guy. And if I'm that guy, I want to be getting paid more than Blake Wheeler. You're going to be the next guy. I don't think we're at the time right now where you have to worry about paying a guy more than Blake Wheeler anymore. It's time to pay a guy like that and give him. Here's the thing about Pierre-Luc Dubois. Every game this season, you could maybe find 1 or 2 where he's had off nights. He still had 50 nights where he's been on. And sure, the goals may not be there or the assist or whatever, but name another player on this team that's been more consistent on a nightly basis in terms of effort and points. And you can look to Kyle Connor, sure. But the effort, the second effort, the winning the puck battles, all of those things, it stands out almost every game. He's in there. He's pissing off other players. He's doing all of these things that maybe 2 guys would normally do on this team. He has it all encapsulated into one. If you're if you're Kevin Shovel-Dale, and if he's going to be the GM past this season, or if you're a new GM and you're coming in, this is the guy that you want to hang your hat. This is your cornerstone of your team going forward. Everybody who looks at the way that Pierre-Luc Dubois plays, that's the way that they're going to play, and that's the difference, right? Pierre-Luc Dubois can set a new culture with this team just by the way that he plays. And he gets out there and he talks. He gets up there, whatever happened tonight. I read Jeff Hamilton's tweet. I don't exactly know what happened, but if Pierre-Luc Dubois at 23 years old wanted to go out there and eat the questions that were coming to him and do it, that's exactly what this team, with Mark Chipman all the way down wants. That's the player that you want in your team. And so you got to, I would, if I was Pierre-Luc Dubois, I'd still be playing hardball. I still think he wants to play here. It's a Canadian market. There's a huge, you can become a mass player in Canada and in the league by being, doing more and more of what he does. He just has to, I think they have to allow him to do it. And I think they have this season. And that's why he's second on the team in points and second in goals and whatever else he's in. It's just, this is a guy, I think, yes, I think, to answer, I'm at the buffet table, as you guys like to say. But I think he's just so, I think this is the guy that you want. And it's the same with Connor Hellebuck, whatever. The guys that come out and actually say what they kind of feel. It's like the Paul Stastnys or whatever. The guys that are honest about it. Like Pierre-Luc Dubois was honest. He was pissed about how they played, how they lost. He's mad about how it's going on. Where was Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele tonight? Apparently Wheeler was asked. He didn't come out. You need players right now that show that they care not only on the ice but off of it. And Pierre-Luc Dubois does that. And a team in a season where it's sputtering out of control and you're probably not going to make the playoffs, you still want a guy to stand up and say there's hope for the future. And I think that's Pierre-Luc Dubois, hands down. It is. That's the guy for me.
The deal is going to happen. It's going to get done. He wants to be here. He wants to be a foundational piece. He's already had one bad breakup in his young career, Sean. I don't think he wants to be viewed or vilified as a guy who forced his way out of town for a second time in his young career. This is a guy who appreciates the responsibility he's been given. He leads the Jets in power play goals. He's getting closer to being that 20 plus minute a game player. And again, tonight, classic. What have we always said about Pierre-Luc Dubois? The more you give him, the more responsibility, the better he plays. Well, you're going up against Nathan MacKinnon and Nazem Kadri, two of the top players in the NHL. Who's the best player for the Jets? Wasn't even close tonight.
No.
So yes, I think it's a short. Again, could he be frustrated by this? Of course. There wasn't a ton of success, but I would even argue in Columbus they upset the best team and almost one of the best teams ever made. And then the next year they beat the Leafs. So, he's had some success. Again, it's not 3 or 4 rounds worth. And he would be frustrated by the losing for sure. But again, I don't see him forcing his way to a bigger market where he can sign. I think he's, again, Sean, you know this. I wrote this in my predictions for 2022. I think even though his production has dipped a bit, I think he is going to sign a contract that is higher than Blake Wheeler's. Or if it's a shorter term, that'll be more money, total money than Josh Morrissey's 50 mil. And I think he will be deserving of it. The big question is always going to be, is he a 60 to 65 point player or is he an 80 point player? Basically, based on the chances he's being able to generate, if he gets a little higher conversion rate, he's going to be a point per game player. But right now it's 0.75. And, the difference between being a $6 million player and an $8.25 million player is going from 65 to 80 plus, right? So the Jets are going to have to bet on that happening, but I agree with a lot of what Scotty already said. This is a guy that is among the league leaders in penalties drawn. His minor penalties are a little bit too high, that's for sure, but you would much rather have to deal with the odd penalty than to have to give a guy the paddles because he's not physically or emotionally engaged in a game.
Right, 100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I wanted to bring this up because Kenny, this is something that we talked about behind the scenes. We didn't have a conversation about it on the show. I kept it off the show, but because of what happened tonight, and Robert Sutton brings this up, he asks if we saw and you alluded to this earlier about how upset Morrissey was in that TSN interview. He says we simply stopped skating. So a behind the scenes thing, right. Sometimes Kenny and I and Scotty and I and all of us together will have conversations or text threads where we talk about stuff kind of behind the scenes. I said this to Ken, we did, and I believe it was the Chicago game, which was Monday.
It was, yep.
It was a Sportsnet game. And Josh Morrissey was my first intermission guest, and I talked to him. And Josh Morrissey, for the record, is an absolutely gem of a human being. I've said this time and time again, this is a captain in waiting. This guy gets it. He understands all of this. But that game was the game after they had just put up 5 goals on the Nashville Predators. Everything seemed to be going their way. They were putting up points. They'd put up points in 3 straight games. They just knocked off Minnesota for the second straight time. It was the first intermission of that game, and we all know how things ended up with Chicago, but it was the first intermission. It was still, they were right in the middle of it. And I just remembered I interviewed Josh Morrissey, and he just did not seem happy in that interview. Now, I'm not saying that I don't expect him to show up and be like, hey, everybody, that's not what I'm saying. It just seemed, I love this line that Ken uses all the time. I'm sure he's used it on the show. This is another one of these Kenny quotes that is just like, they encapsulate everything. You could put this on a t-shirt. He'll always say when things aren't going well, and I do think that this Jets team is subject to this. He'll always say there's not a lot of joy in Joyville. Right. And the one thing about NHL hockey teams is they're the same as senior hockey teams, as beer league hockey teams, as, bantam hockey teams. Teams that are having fun are typically teams that are succeeding. Right. And sometimes you'll find teams that are, in the neighborhood of succeeding, but they're not having fun. And that's a problem. And so this brought up again by Robert Sutton, the idea about Morrissey, simply, saying we stopped skating, just not seeming that he's overly happy in this interview. Like, this to me seems like an issue with this team. The Winnipeg Jets, and listen, losing shouldn't be fun. But you don't get anywhere by absolutely, not enjoying yourself. And I just wonder at this stage if the lack of, and I'll use the line again, Ken, because I absolutely love it. And you know what? I shouldn't have given you credit. I should have just said I made it up myself and ran with it. But
Claude Noel made it up, not me or you.
Yeah, I guess so. But
no joy in Joyland.
The only idea that there's no joy in Joyland, how big of a problem is that at this stage when we're seeing it creep into on-screen interviews in the middle of games?
Yeah, I think today would be different than the other night because that was the first intermission compared to the second, where the Jets were dominant in the first and absolutely got their lunch money stolen in the second. So I can understand the frustration. I know that again, Sean, we work in TV, so we want people to be engaged all the time. I still think that the majority of people, even the ones who are as thoughtful as Josh Morrissey, would much rather just go to the locker room and decompress after the period rather than having to speak during an intermission. And again, I understand you pay a lot of money for the rights, you want to have those things, but yeah, I mean, to me, it's not. I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think it is important. I do think that, Sean, your point is that the Jets seem to have this dark cloud over them this year.
Yes,
and that's something that we haven't. I mean, we shouldn't say we haven't seen it, but it seems to be lingering a little bit too long. Because usually at the end of the dark cloud comes the rainbow, but the Jets' rainbow seems to be missing. I would say that is accurate, but I would say that Again, I don't know that it's why they're in this spiral right now, but I do think it is something that, again, and on the other part of it too. I mean, when a team is not meeting expectations, I don't want them to be smiling all the time. I think they should be pissed off about it. So, but again, you got to find that balance between enjoying the game and also getting to where you want to go. And Montreal's a great example. And
perfect.
Marty St. Louis has a lot to do with that. I mean, he's brought a little bit of fire, and he's got some players committed. And right now, the Jets don't have a good enough commitment. Again, Dave Lowry's not going to say it, and I don't expect him to. But the Jets' level of commitment for 60 minutes is not there to a high enough level. All we've heard about is urgency. You did not see urgency today. Yes, we know that the Colorado Avalanche are an elite team, but if a team is urgent, you find a way to push back at 3-0. That's what I see. Yeah, McKinnon was absolutely on fire.
It's a franchise record for them too, by the way.
Incredible. I mean, again, so we talk about Dubois. Dubois was involved. 7 shots on goal for Dubois. 8 attempts, I think. I mean, McKinnon had twice as many shots on net as Dubois, and Dubois was a factor in the game. But McKinnon was an absolute stallion in this game, speaking of Claude Noel's sayings. It's impressive, but the Jets do need to find a way to. I'm all for focus and being locked in and game face and all of those things, but right now it seems like a job for the Jets. It doesn't seem like it's a joyous place to come to the rink. We've often commented about this at practice, you guys. We've seen it this year. There have been days when it sounds like a library. There have been days where the passing is not crisp, the execution is not there. You're waiting for Connor Hellebuck to smash his stick over the crossbar. Some days they're fired up and ready to go, but I would say that that dark cloud that you kind of referenced has been hanging over the Jets for a while, and until they find a way to have clear skies sailing in, it's going to be challenging.
Yeah.
Scotty,
with an appearance, you got to like that.
On this, because I do think that this is a really interesting issue, and Ken brought up something that I think is really interesting. Is now I'm going to couch this by saying when the Winnipeg Jets went on their run in 2018, I used to think that you could gauge how a team was going to come out of the gates by how they were in morning skates, and there was a lot of times that the Jets in that series against the Nashville Predators were dead in the morning skates, and I do think that it would typically translate to the beginning beginning of those games, but they were able to find themselves those years. So I don't want to throw everything in my entire belief that, the way practices go are the way that teams go. But I will say this, we've seen a lot of really successful teams over the years roll into Winnipeg, and their pregame skates they're a carnival. They're having so much fun. They are out there, and you can tell they're happy to be with each other, and they're laughing, and they're playing little tricks on each other. But at the same time, they're laser focused on what the coach is asking them to do. In other words, they're striking a really great balance between attacking the task at hand, but having fun at the same time. I don't think that we've seen anything under Paul Maurice earlier in the season or under Dave Lowry that comes anywhere close to that. Have you seen that, Scott?
Maybe once or twice this year. Like it hasn't been a lot, like you say, right? Like, some of the best practices, or at least, pre-games, the best practices I saw were the early, like during that 2-week kind of window where the Jets didn't play, and, guys were kind of taking it seriously because they wanted, to stay in shape and that sort of thing. And the other one, there's been a couple where it's like, there almost seems like a competition between like Hellebuck and the shooters, and there's a lot of cheering after guys score goals and all that. And, Hellebuck smashing a stick, but he's pissed off because he's not saving the shots. And it's a competitive, it's a competitive league, and teams are competitive, and internally it's all competition, right? But no, there's some times, even the last time in their last homestand here, where you just get to the rink and it's like, man, I should just go back to bed. Like, this is depressing, like kind of watching this, and it's just like, there's nothing going on. Like, people are, it's just, it's a routine, right? They're almost out there because that's what they do. They have to be out there. That's how they prepare for the game. So they want to be on the ice, but there's nothing amping them up. And then, so this is even a bigger problem when they're only playing at half capacity or in front of 250 people. You're not amping yourself up in the morning. How are you going to get amped up later in the day, right? Like, it's already bad enough if there's nobody in the building. Now that you have somebody in the building, yeah. There should be some crowd energy, but, this is a team that struggled all year to, just to manufacture their own kind of, will to win, right? And I don't know if that starts in practice. It's one of those things where, like you said, during the Nashville series, again, different team though. But this year, a team that has struggled so mightily at times to manufacture an atmosphere for themselves, some energy, anything like that. When you're already waking up in the morning, coming to the skate, and you don't have it then, I just don't know how that translates to the night. Like, how do you amp yourself up when you don't even? Again, we're kind of speculating that this is the case because we don't know what they're thinking and they haven't talked about it. But how do you amp yourself up if you wake up in the morning and you don't even want to be there? And I think that's kind of where that's kind of where we're at. So yeah. Anyways, no, I haven't seen enough of it. Right? I think. There was times, I think, when this team had an identity of being staying in the fight, all that kind of stuff. Like, there was at least an energy about that because there was an identity for this team. This team comes to the rink and they don't even know who they are. They don't know who they are as a team individually. Sometimes, like, when you're searching for that and then you're trying to search for a way to get pumped up for the game, I think that's difficult.
Yeah, a quick one there. Wheeler was saying that he needs Brendan Dillon to calm down because he didn't want him killing their top scorers. He wasn't saying he shouldn't play like that. And Brendan Dillon has brought a physical edge, especially coming out of the break. That edge has been higher. So, I think it's probably not fully on brand. But and one quick one, Elias Lindholm is one of the best players in the NHL. So I saw a comparison from our friend the General, saying Dubois is not in that conversation. Well, I think that there would be transitioning in terms of that's how Lindholm was at 23 years old, and then he went to Calgary and started to get into the spotlight. Now he's growing into one of their best players. So yeah. I'd say they have more similarities than maybe differences here, even though obviously Lindholm is playing at a higher level and producing at a higher level.
I've got a little bit of housekeeping to take care of here first.
Okay.
Tracy Evans-Burr said earlier we might all hit the farmery before the end of the show. I'm going to say this right now. If you were stopping, if you've got a beer in your hand and you're waiting to crack it because you think you're going to offend Scott or Kenny or myself, Get at it. Get right at it. Ken is late to a wine party right now. I said, let the party start. Let's get at it. I'll be honest. I had a couple of beers in the dressing room in the hockey game I played at before this, and I'm going to go have some more when this is all said and done. So don't let us get in your way. Get at it. Get absolutely at that, everybody. And then I wanted to tackle this here. T. Will, he was after me. He was after me for my PLD comments earlier in the show. I'm going to be a nice guy, and I'm going to let his comments back into the show, even though he tried to take me down. I'm interested in this because Scotty talked about this earlier, and this has been a topic of conversation in the past here. But where the Jets are right now in their season, and the obvious things that we're not seeing from them, listen, I lost a lot of faith in this Jets team after that last game they played against the Dallas Stars. Yes, they came away with a point. They actually improved their situation because they were 6 points out of a playoff spot rather than 7 and stayed that way over the last couple of days. But I took a look at that game. I didn't think the effort was anywhere near enough. That's not what gets you to the playoffs. And I lost a lot of faith in that Jets team there. But T. Will asking here, where are our leaders after this loss? Did they sneak out of the back of the building wearing trench coats and a fake mustache or fake mustaches? That to me is an indicting statement of how some people. Now, let me couch this by saying, as journalists, we're really close to this. We're requesting certain players. So when certain players don't come out, and there was a point last year where I think there was a lot of journalists that believed that Blake Wheeler should have come out and addressed the media after a loss, and he didn't. There was stuff that happened behind the scenes. I don't want to point fingers in this situation, but it created something there. When we notice that guys aren't stepping out and we think that guys should be stepping out, that's one thing, right? Because journalists, we have an expectation for how we do our job, how we need to tell stories. I always think that the journalist's level and the closeness to this makes their awareness of this situation up here where the fans should be there. That said, if fans like T. Will are making comments like this, it's clear that there's, for every T. Will, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who think, where are the leaders in this moment? Where are the people we want to hear these answers for? Do you guys think that the Mark Scheifele's, the Blake Wheelers, the Connor Hellebucks, the Josh Morrisseys are stepping up and playing the role they need to be playing at a crucial time of the season for the Winnipeg Jets? Ken, I want to ask you that first.
Yeah, no problem. First and foremost, I think if the room is open, it's a different story. We've seen this for years. Blake Wheeler was almost always standing at his locker. He was the guy who spoke first on multiple occasions and for almost pretty much every game and for many, many of the bad losses the Jets have endured. I think that going to Zoom kind of takes away part. I'm not taking anyone off the hook, but I also don't.
You're explaining the situation well.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. So just in terms of context, I mean, since Blake has been the captain, and even before that, he was often one of the most available players around. Josh Morrissey has been at the podium an awful lot this year after bad losses. Mark Scheifele has taken his turn and, hasn't had a ton to say about some of those losses. And this is what I would always say. Even though Wheeler's been often available, I think that Blake is often the sober second thought is also helpful for Blake because he runs so hot that he kind of is always trying to keep a level demeanor after a game, even though he's kind of pissed off about it. So again, would today have been a good time for Blake Wheeler to be at a podium? But sure. But to me, it's much more important the actions than the words. Though I do think, the word accountability is brought up all the time. I mean, accountability comes in different forms. I mean, I think it's much more important for Blake Wheeler to step up and play well on Sunday than it is for him to say whatever he says into a microphone in front of a reporter. Part of the responsibility is speaking to reporters. I'm not taking him off the hook completely, and. Yes, he was asked for, but again, when we're not on the scene, that makes it also very difficult to me as well. So, I mean, in terms of context, if we're there, so would I have liked to have heard him speak, Sean? Yes. Am I ripping him for not being available? No, because, in a lot of cases, Blake has earned the benefit of the doubt over the years in terms of, I don't think we'd be up here saying that he's shirking his responsibilities.
Scotty?
Yeah, I'm on the fence of this, and part of this is because last year is, this came to a head in the press box last year. I think me and Kenny were screaming at each other. Well, I was screaming at Kenny.
That was
I think
awesome.
Kenny was
That was
trying
awesome, by the
I
way.
was trying to calm you down. We weren't really
right,
screaming
and so
at
my
each
whole
other.
thing was, this was after I want to say it was this, how bad did they lose to the Oilers? I think it was Game 6 of that 7-game losing streak.
Yeah.
And Blake hadn't talked throughout the whole thing, and I was like, "Where is Blake Wheeler? Like, we asked for him, he wasn't made available to us." It's another situation that happened completely that kind of went all the hell eventually, and it created some strife and whatever, and for me it was different because at that time I was covering COVID, and I just how the sausage was made. We wanted Doc Bruson, and we wanted Pallister, and there's a point to all this, is that you're hoping that people step up to the plate, leaders step up to the plate when they need to step up to the plate. And you're right, Kenny. I mean, to Blake Wheeler's full credit, every game he would be out there after the game, unless he was injured or the odd night that he wouldn't be standing there, which was very rare. Blake Wheeler for years would always be out there. He would answer anybody's questions. After losses, he would be pretty happy. After wins, he would be a little bristly with the media. That's kind of how Blake Wheeler kind of kept it even keel, I suppose. Not trying to get too high or not trying to get too low. The problem is your season's falling apart completely. It's over. Like this season, the odds are probably like 92% now that the Jets don't make the playoffs. Is it Pierre-Luc Dubois? And good on Pierre-Luc Dubois for saying he wanted to go, and maybe that let Blake Wheeler off the hook or whatever. But isn't that where Blake Wheeler shouldn't just come out and say, no, I'm going and I'm going to say something, regardless if I'm running hot or not running hot or whatever. I'm the captain of this team, and I come out and I speak to what's going on right now because it's not good. Like, he doesn't owe it to the media, but does he not owe it to the fans? Like, does he not owe it to the people that he claims that he's happy that are back in the rink and all that? Like, I mean, this is the thing. Like, these players have paid a lot of money. One of probably the easiest parts of their job is having to talk to the media for 5 minutes after the game. It's not that, like, I'm not saying it's not easy all the time, but it's not that hard either. I don't think it's not. I just wonder, like, does he not have some accountability to the people that pay their hard-earned money to come and watch this team? Or obviously they're not doing that right now because they're on the road. But when the Jets get back here next week and play Montreal on Tuesday, is there not accountability for that? Like, that's the part that I don't understand. And part of what happened last year was because I was caught up in the politics of COVID and all that, and I just figured, why is Blake Wheeler any different than anybody else who was in a leadership position? Come out and speak when you lose, and when it's going really bad, lead. And I don't know if there should be separation of quote unquote church and state there, but I don't know. Like, I don't understand why he wouldn't come out. I guess that's where I'm at. I don't understand why a leader doesn't come out when it's going bad. That's just where I'm at. I think that's your job. You are the captain of the team. Come out and talk. That's kind of where I'm at with that. But again, I understand that this is a fine line for some of these guys, and you don't want a guy to come out and just say nothing, right? Like, that's another part of the job that people don't see too, is that we have game stories to fill with quotes or clip packages for TV that you want to get a good quote or something in, right? And if you just have a guy that comes out and says nothing, whatever, it's not good. But at the same time, when you're marred in a 4-game losing streak at the most critical time of the year, maybe that's where you want to come out and say something to try and whatever, try and help the situation. I know that's difficult, but maybe Blake says something, it's not helpful. I don't know. But, I mean, you're the face of the franchise when it comes to the C that you wear on your jersey. That's part of your job.
I wanted to say this quickly. Is that Craig Zamzow is asking about this question about the Whalers. Is the answer to your question Wayne Babbage? That just is off the top of my head. He's talking about a player who had 200
You just
points
showed the
seasons.
answer.
I know Wayne Babbage.
He just showed the answer. You just highlighted.
Oh, did he?
Mike Rogers is the answer. Mike Rogers.
Did I? And what is it? Oh, okay.
You said Wayne Babbage.
Okay, fine. Whatever. I got it wrong.
What are your thoughts, Sean? What do you think?
I wanted to respond to what you guys are saying here.
Right.
I say it like this. Blake Wheeler doesn't know anything to the media. I do think Scott's right. He owes something to the fans, right? And I do think that that's something that's lost in this. The media, we don't look at this and say these guys need to come out and they need to talk to us. We don't have this feeling there. We are trying to use our access to tell you stories. To me, and I've always said this before, I think that the thing that players don't understand when they turn to someone in the media and they lip them off or they say something or they give them, like a curse at them or something like that, what people see at home is that player turning into the camera and cursing at the camera, especially if I ask a question as a journalist and it's a question, and this is what we should be doing as journalists. We should be asking questions that the fans have. And if I ask a question and a player turns to me and tells me to F off, and I'm a fan who has that very same question, I feel like you just told me to F off, right? That's what I think a lot of players don't seem to understand. So I do think, when it comes down to it, there is no NHL without the fans. There's no $8 million paychecks without the fans. So I think Scott's right with that. But almost the thing that I think most here is Blake Wheeler, I think, owes it to his teammates. This team is struggling. They've got questions that need to be answered. They are not fulfilling the expectations that were put in front of them. And I think we've heard this before. We've heard from players in the Jets locker room in the past that are saying, why am I sitting here and constantly having the camera in my face answering these questions about what is going wrong and I'm going to say it out there. I know people love Dustin Byfuglien, but Dustin Byfuglien was not a guy who ever went and was accountable in front of the media when the Jets were struggling. He usually wouldn't talk to the media, and there were players
once a month. Didn't matter if they were struggling or not. Buff was on a once a month plan by the end.
Exactly, with an A on his chest. But in the meantime, there's players who needed to carry the weight in the media while that wasn't happening, and we know, guys, that behind the scenes, there's players that are bothered by that, or there's players that feel that that's unfair, that that's happening, and this is what I think. If you are the captain of a team, and you're right, Ken, and let's give credit where it's due. When the dressing room was open, Blake Wheeler stood up at his locker as we walked in the room every single game. Maybe there was extenuating circumstance that he wasn't there, but let's make sure we get this out of the way and give credit where it's due. Blake Wheeler stood up at the end of every game and answered questions. Wins, losses, elimination from playoffs, he stood up and he was there. So let's make that clear. Let's make that distinction clear before we do this. Ken, I thought it was important that you brought up what's happened in this Zoom world that has existed outside of this. It's changed things. The availability is smaller now, so it's come into this thing where, people are talking in the chat room. They're talking about, well, was he asked this and that? My take on this is, especially the way things are going right now, is what the Winnipeg Jets, I think personally, could use as a team is their captain standing up and shielding the bullets for the rest of his team every single time, even if it's on Zoom, the way that he used to do in the room back in the old days before COVID and before this kind of stuff happened. Now, maybe there's reasons for that. We haven't had enough conversations with these players to know why that's not happening anymore. But I will say this, the Jets are, the more you spend your time explaining to the media why everything is going wrong, an extremely intelligent guy like Blake Wheeler, a guy who's willing to fight for his team like Blake Wheeler, and a guy who is, willing to stand up and be a shield, could be a very huge asset for that team right now. And we're not seeing it, to Scott's point, we're not seeing it as much anymore. I don't know why. But I do think that you're hearing from fans. They want to hear more from the player. I think you're hearing from the media that you want to hear more from that player. And I do think that it's a potential issue people have to, that the team has to kind of deal with. Ken, you want to say something? Get at it.
No, I mean, again, I have no problem with any of that. And like I said, when I was trying to provide context, I wasn't saying that, Blake Wheeler, shouldn't speak. I'm just saying, to me, it's more important. The bigger issue for the Jets isn't who's speaking. And Buff is a great example. Did Buff become any less of a fan favorite because he didn't speak to the media? They didn't care. They don't care.
No,
Buff's the big guy bobbing with his head bobbing, dancing, pulling
Don't
people.
you think it caused strife in the room?
At times, sure. Yeah, I mean, some people weren't happy. I mean, we had conversations about that.
Here's another one. I mean, let's bring this one up here. You know what I mean? Like in a situation like this at this stage, there's very specific times we will get to talk to Kevin Cheveldayoff. Don't you think a season like this, there's extenuating circumstances that we're in a position where it's like maybe you should come out more often? Like it was a couple weeks ago that we talked to Kevin Cheveldayoff and he gave this team his blessing and his full confidence. Well, at this stage right now, like fans want answers about their team. They want to know what they're thinking. Are we all in? Are we looking like we're getting towards selling? And I know that there's a game that has to be played as a GM, and we know that Kevin Cheveldayoff. I've always said this about him. Kevin Cheveldayoff, if he plays poker, he doesn't keep his cards close to the vest. He keeps them on the inside pocket of his vest. This guy doesn't let anything go. But at the same time, boy, oh boy, like maybe right now with this team taking heat, this is where people in management are supposed to step in and try and direct the heat towards themselves. I think it's a good point that's made about Kevin Cheveldayoff. I think it's a good point that's made about Blake Wheeler. There's a lot of blame to go around right now for what's happening. I just wonder who should be shouldering it.
No, totally fair. And like I said, to me, the bigger issue is the fact that the Jets can't get more than the one line going at one time. I mean, do I want to hear more from leaders and players? Of course. But the bigger issue for me is... No, this is an easy answer, and I know you can handle it.
We're not in the dressing room. We're not allowed in the dressing room right now. We can't get into the dressing room to find out what's going on because we're not in the dressing room right now. This is... Go on.
And again, other people former Jets aren't going to bury their teammates either. I mean, it's just generally, that's part of the whole hockey culture thing is that people don't want to tattle on their old teammates. But exactly. that doesn't mean the search doesn't continue. No, my only point is that I think it's far more important for Blake Wheeler and specifically Mark Scheifele, who I didn't like. Where was the head on a swivel on the hat trick goal? Like. He sort of went towards the puck carrier, and then looked over his shoulder, and then wondered why Landeskog was standing there. I mean, that was the opposite of the other day, where he was this time he's in the frame for the wrong reason, not because he was the closest guy to the puck. That was one where I don't care what the score is. I don't care if it's 1-1, 1-0. If you have a 3-goal lead. You got a shoulder check there, right? I mean, that's just a play that has to be made by a high-level player who has hockey sense. So anyways, those guys need to play. I mean, again, I said this to you in the first period. The biggest question about the Jets, as soon as they went up 2-0, I said, okay, well, the Dubois line's obviously going tonight. Can the Scheifele line get going in the same game as Dubois has? And the answer to that question for far too many nights this year has been no. And that's one of the reasons why the Jets are mired in this rut of inconsistency and unsure of what is in the bag. I mean, Adam Lowry said it best. I mean, you should know what you're good at for situations when things aren't going well, which tonight in the second period was obviously one of them, and it got worse in the third instead of getting better.
Ken, I promise I'm going to go find my phone, and I bet there's a lot of gold you sent on it there, and you were wondering why I wasn't responding to it. I'm going to find it. It's lost right now. But I bet you were all over it. If I was sending you were all over it, and you were like, "Where's?"
Hey, I got good news for you. When you don't respond to me, I send notes to other people. I'm sorry to say. I mean, you are, buddy. You're my number one, but.
If this is a relationship, you just told me that you're cheating on me. I'm
not ride or die anymore.
Hey, I'm going to shut this down right now because Ken's got a glass of wine in his hand and a whole bunch of people who are probably just outside of the frame.
No, they're sleeping. Yeah, it's already. I got writing to do.
And I want you to make sure that you fulfill that vacation so that you're ready when you come back and you see me on the hug rug with.
I look forward to that. I look forward to that.
And Scotty, it was great to see you, my friend. It feels like it hasn't been that long, but it feels like it's been a while. So it's good to see you. Guys, it's I think that despite the fact of what's going on here, we take a look at we had almost 300 people in the room.
Great engagement.
People are engaged here. I like to see that, just because I know that sometimes earlier on in the year apathy can fall in when the Jets aren't playing at their best, and clearly they're not at the moment right now. But I love that people are in here giving us ideas on what to talk about, pushing us on our stances on certain things. T. Will absolutely shredding me off the top for me, daring to question.
Checking the receipts, baby. Checking the receipts.
The 1-in-6 nature of Pierre-Luc Dubois before this. But hey, I love it. I love it when people come at me. What do you got to say, Ken?
I would say quickly put the merch up, and then I was going to say I'll be joining you. I'll be joining you live from the Gila River Arena, Sean, on Sunday.
My man.
In what could be the final meeting between Jets 1.0 and 2.0, at least at that arena. So It's going to be strange.
Well, if you take a look up on the screen there, we've got www.sportsnet.store. That's where you can go to get the Kenny and Renny collection. And what a collection it is. 3 different types of shirts that we brought the prices down on. 3 different colors of wake-up mugs. One you can see Scotty is using right now. They're great. Hey, listen, if you want to send a subtle message to your family members at the breakfast table, that's the best way to do it. I think Ken passively, aggressively is doing that to Stacy in the morning now that he's got I think that's happening. Water bottles. I know that Ken's water bottle, the handle has now a Kenny and.
Oh, muted. Oh, Sean, you're muted.
Uh-oh.
Just straight muted.
Buddy, we can't hear you.
T. Willie pulled the plug on Sean's mic.
Your mic got plugged. You pulled your plug out, buddy. Oh, now you're muted. There we go. It wouldn't be a real real show without technical difficulties.
Exactly, yeah.
Buddy, unmute.
Here I am. I'm back. Anyway, if you want your own mug, there. Am I back?
Yes.
Am I back? Okay.
Yes.
If you want your own mug, go to the Sportsnet store. Check it out. If you want your own water bottle, if you want your own shirt, and we got more coming. We really, really appreciate the support that people have lent to us. That's awesome stuff that you've jumped in on that. We absolutely love it. Hey, listen, I'll say this about Ken's Wake Up. It's a lifestyle, people. You buy one of those things, and your life is going to turn around, because you're going to wake up in life. You're going to smell new smells. You're going to see new things. Wake up in life. Ken's leading the way. It's great stuff. I just want to thank everyone for joining us on a Friday night. I know that if you were looking for permission for beers and you didn't get it before, now's the time to crack them and get at it. I think that's what we're all going to do here. Thank you so much for joining us. We can't wait to see you on Sunday when we do it all over again as the Jets face a game. Are they all must-wins at this stage? I think so. Must-win game against a team below them in the standings in the Arizona Coyotes. Kenny's going to be there, so he's going to bring it even harder than he usually does. And I don't know, should I call out anyone on the Jets to make sure that they play good next game? Should I do that, guys, before we go? Anyway, thanks so much, everybody. Sorry, what?
One last one on the self-promotion side. I know a lot of people in the chat room are asking about trade stuff. So in my monthly mailbag for February, which just got posted today at sportsnet.ca, I put the link in the comments. I did address a lot of those areas of concern. Check it out. Let me know what you think, and we'll discuss further on Sunday. Have a great weekend.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. We can't wait to see you again on Sunday. Have yourselves a great weekend. Hopefully this is a good way to lead into it. Hey, maybe you'll still be going on Sunday afternoon when we chat with you. We'll see everybody later. Talk to you later.